Good morning, sixth graders. We are going to start with 7-116, and to let you know, we're kind of ramping things up a little bit. So you're going to have to, kind of put the pedal to the metal a little bit. We're going to start increasing our pace just a bit here. So let's go through this. We're continuing from what you did the last 2 days with equations and inequalities with variables. So let's look at 7-116. We've got Mo Cui studying for Spanish and history. He knows he needs to spend more time studying Spanish than history. He decides he'll spend half an hour more studying Spanish than history. So I would start off just kind of going like this, to be honest. I'd have Spanish with S and history with H. If we look back, he decides he needs to spend more, he'll spend half an hour more studying Spanish than he will history. So I would say something like this, right? 0.5 more. Okay, that's something to kind of keep in mind. And then A says let H represent the amount of time he spends studying history, and an expression that represents the amount of time studying Spanish. So if you think about it, he's going to spend a half an hour more studying Spanish, so his expression needs to be the time that he spends studying history plus that half an hour more, which is going to be represented by 0 and 5/10. So A, your expression looks like this. He spends the time that he does his history plus the half an hour more. Is B. So this gets a little tricky. He spends more than 2 hours and 15 minutes studying for Spanish. How does this amount of time compare to the expression you wrote in part A? So you always want to say, CPM does this, go back and look at your expression. It's H plus 5/10. So definitely you want to start with rewriting that. So H plus 5/10. Okay, which again is the amount of time that he's going to do Spanish, right? So he spends more than 2 hours and 15 minutes studying for Spanish. Okay, so you have to think about this. It's trying to trick you a little bit. If you had 2 hours and 15 minutes, you have to think about how much of an hour 15 minutes is. So think like 15 plus 15 is 30, right? Plus another 15 is 45, plus another 15 gives you 60. So that means that 15 minutes is 1/4 of an hour, right? And 1/4 is the same as 0 and 25 hundredths. So really what you want when you get all of this worked out is you've got the time that he studies for Spanish, right, which is the history plus the half an hour, has to be more than the time that he is 2 hours, and 15 minutes, or 2 hours, that's a decimal right there, and 2¼ hours, or 2.25 hours. Okay, next let's look at C. Okay, and it says, again, we're going to go back. I want to make sure we use our previous work. So more than 2.25 hours. Okay, so it says try to list all the possible amounts of time he could spend studying for history. So if you remember what we did from the last 2 days, we actually are going to solve this using inverse operations. So we have addition, so we're going to solve using subtraction. So I'm going to rewrite down here 5 minus, and you have to remember, line up your decimal when you're subtracting decimals. Could be 12 minus 5 is 7. All right, so 1.75. So remember, you're going to bring everything else down. So your solution is going to be the number of hours he's done studying for history, right, is going to be more than 1.75. Okay? And if you think about what this means from the last problem, you can also think of this as 1 hour and 45 minutes, since 15 minutes is 1/4 of an hour. Okay, so if you think about this, it's going to be anything that more than 1 hour and 45 minutes. So you can't actually list all of the solutions because it could be 1 hour and 46 minutes, it could be 1 hour and 47, 1 hour and 48, 1 hour and 49, 1 hour and 50, right? You could just list and list and list and list and list forever. So you can't actually list all of the answers. Okay, it would be for C, you can't do it. And finally, let's look at D. What is the smallest amount of time he could spend studying for history, and what is the largest amount? So we kind of just talked about that, but so the smallest amount of time, again, would be, since if you're going back, right, it's got to be more than 1.75, or again, this is 1 hour 45 minutes. So it could be anything. The smallest, I guess, amount of time has to be something bigger than 1 hour 45. So probably you could say the smallest would be 1 hour and 46 minutes, right? That would be the smallest, but it also asks for the largest, right? And the largest would be, well, theoretically, right, he could spend every minute until the test studying would be your largest. So really, you can't say what the largest would be.